Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and we've got another mock draft video to help you guys out with your upcoming season. Yes, we are probably about two and a half weeks away from the NFL season starting, so we've got some more mock draft videos to help you guys out, and this is going to be for 10-team leagues, and hopefully this is going to give you some great advice with those drafts. So let's talk about it. So as I mentioned, this is a 10-team league. A lot of people typically do 12. I've seen a lot of 10-team leagues. And again, every league is a little different, but I wanted to give you guys some insight on a 10-team league. Obviously, you're going to be a little bit more of a higher quality draft than I would say 12-team because of the amount, but there's still a lot of great insight to help you guys out. And with the season being here almost, 2-3 weeks away, I want to make sure this video is out to help you guys out because most of you are probably doing your drafts this weekend or next. So again, I wanted to be prepared. Now, I chose the 7th spot of a 10-team league. Obviously, it will be different in every single one of your drafts. I encourage mock drafts as much as you can. So let's do this draft here. Now, this is still a full PPR. It's not super flex or anything like that. So hopefully this helps you kind of get some guidance of where these players are going. Now, typically running back is a strategy I like to go with. Running back in the first, I would say 3 rounds is important. You got to get at least 2 to have some success because it is a very, very tough position to replace. Now, with that said, injuries have happened, so we can talk about handcuffs and things like that. Now, here at the 7th spot of a 10-team league, you saw a couple receivers go. I've got plenty of options. Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Achane. I'm going to go Jonathan Taylor here. He's a great option, especially if there is a healthy Daniel Jones. Not saying he's a great quarterback, but he absolutely helped Jonathan Taylor last season. James Cook is the other running back I would have gone with because he's a good running back as well. Now, with the turn, you obviously see some of the running backs, Hampton, Barkley. You still have players like Achane, Genty, Chase Brown. Really good options there. And then, again, we can get a receiver later on. If you're worried about that strategy, you really want to have a top-tier receiver, you could go maybe Drake London, A.J. Brown. But, again, I typically like the running back position a little bit more. I'm going to take the risk. There's a lot of upside for Achane. I understand the risk with it because, again, you've got a team that doesn't have premier wide receivers. You have a team that's got a quarterback. We're not sure how he's going to play. A lot of things going on in the Miami Dolphins. But I think Malik Willis is actually a safe play. I think he's a really good quarterback when it comes to just being safe, right? He's not going to make the dumb play. He's going to make smart plays. Yeah, the receivers are obviously something that you'd love to see an improvement on, but Achane is going to get a lot of options, and I'm going to take him there with that. Now you can go wide receiver here. I have seen plenty of people go the running back position again. You don't need 3-star running backs. You can if you plan on using one as trade bait. I'm going to get another solid running back a little bit later on. I'd rather get my wide receivers here. Now, looking at the options, you got George Pickens, you got Rashee Rice, you can go T. Higgins, Tetairoa McMillan. Really good options here. I'll go with the George Pickens pick. I understand, obviously, he's still the 1B to the 1A in CeeDee Lamb. You could go vice versa. Both those players are going to be phenomenal this season as long as Dak is healthy. Those guys are going to be off the charts, and realistically, Pickens has a lot to prove, right? You got a wide receiver who's trying to get that long-term contract. I do think Dallas wants him. He's going to be pretty pricey, so that he's really absolutely trying to get that resume built, so when next season comes, he is going to be available for any team that wants to sign him. Now, you see a couple more receivers. You saw Rashee Rice, you see Higgins. Now, again, this is a mock draft with AI involved and things like that. Your drafts are going to be a little bit different and probably a lot more, I would say, realistic. And what I mean by that is if you look at Team 8, you got a lot of running backs. You're not going to probably have league mates that are doing that. Is it possible? Absolutely. I've been in plenty of drafts where I've seen some players, some leagues, you got players that are picking some, questionable ways. But with that said, that's not always going to be there because you could obviously see maybe 2 receivers, maybe 3 receivers and a running back. That's possible, but all 4 running backs, not always the case. Now, I do still want another wide receiver. And looking at the options in the 4th round, you got McMillan, Smith, McConkey, Egbuka. Really great options here. Of those 4, right, you look at those receivers, the safest one that I would say has the best floor is going to be Devonta Smith. Then behind that's McConkey. But I like Devonta Smith being the wide receiver 1 for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts absolutely loved him even with A.J. Brown being there. Devonta Smith obviously is going to be in that nice setup role. I love what this season looks like for him. Again, there's obviously some issues with some of his hamstring things that are going on, but I think he'll be ready for the season and look really, really good this year. Now that I've got my 2 starting wide receivers, my 2 starting running backs, now you can go based off of upside. Maybe you want to stretch a little bit, grab another player that you absolutely love. I'm going to go tight end a little bit later. You do see some of the big, the top tight ends starting to go early. I would rather get a tight end a little bit later. Now, looking at the options here, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, great options. Maybe I go running back again. You got David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, who I really like. Here, I'm going to go Jalen Waddle. I think Waddle's in a good position, especially with Bo Nix at quarterback. A lot better situation than he had with Tua. He's going to absolutely try to show why he was traded for what they gave up for him. And I think Waddle is going to be the wide receiver 1, and Sutton's going to be the wide receiver 2. Yes, Cortland Sutton's got obviously that built-in, rapport with Bo Nix already, but Jalen Waddle is way more talented, and I think he's going to get a lot more options. And Bo Nix passed a lot last season. I think a lot of people forget about that. So I like him there. Now, I would love to have gotten Swift if he was going to fall to me there. Obviously, he went, and so I don't get to get him. I am not going to get another running back. I'm going to try to get a running back a little bit later because realistically, Judkins and Henderson, it's tough to say where they're going to play. Judkins obviously has a little bit more upside if the Browns are actually a good team, which they're not. So realistically, his floor is a lot harder to kind of really determine. Henderson has upside, but you still got Ryan J. Stevenson, who's absolutely going to take some touches. So I'm going to hold off on that. Now, I'm going to go wide receiver again here. I'm actually going to go Terry McLaurin. I think wide receiver 1 for the Commanders is a great pickup as my 4th receiver. I don't have to necessarily start him every week. Obviously, you're hoping that Jaden Daniels is healthy, which so far he is. As long as he has the season that he's had in the past, Terry McLaurin is going to be an absolute steal for you. Now, you start to see some of the mixture of quarterbacks, right? You saw, obviously, Allen and Lamar Jackson and stuff like that. Joe Burrow's a little high. He's usually not that high in most drafts just because his rushing ability is not necessarily there. Most quarterbacks who have that rushing upside is usually the ones who are going a lot earlier. Being in the 7th and 8th round, you want to start thinking about quarterback, though, because these are where you get quarterbacks that don't necessarily have the rushing upside, but have the ability to be a top 10, top 5 based off their yards and touchdowns. So that would be definitely a play I'm going to look at going into probably the 8th round. Now, in the 7th round here, again, I'll have 4 wide receivers. I feel really good about them. I'm going to get my tight end here in Kyle Pitts. A lot of great wide receivers. Again, you can get wide receivers later, which is why I mentioned running back position is definitely the position you want to try to grab as early as you can. I am going to get my quarterback here in Dak Prescott. Obviously, I feel really good about my overall starting lineup, right? I got Dak and Jonathan Taylor and Kyle Pitts and Devonta Smith. I feel really good about this team. Now I've got to build the depth pieces. Now, being that it's a 10-team league, obviously you're going to have a lot more of a better depth roster. With that said, though, the challenges of a 10-team league where people I don't think give enough credit compared to a 12-team is because you have so many good players on your bench, the challenge in that is who do you start? It's easy when you have a 12-team league or maybe a 14-team league where your depth isn't as good as a starting lineup, so it's easier for you to kind of leave those players on the bench and maybe use them for bye weeks or something like that. But when you have a team that has really players that could start every single week, but they're maybe your 3rd or 4th best player, that's where the challenges come in. And that's where your strategy actually is huge and key, making sure you know your matchups. So I've got 4 bench spots. I got kicker and defense. Now looking at this, I'm not going to get a backup quarterback. I'm not going to get a backup tight end because, again, waivers are key, especially in 10-team leagues. So I'd rather grab, obviously, players that are going to help really build this roster up. Now, I like J.K. Dobbins as a nice little option here. I could get, Manunge, like Alec Pierce. You got really good options. I'm going to go J.K. Dobbins, grab another running back. I want to have at least a 3rd running back to 4 running backs on this roster because you got to deal with bye weeks and things like that. So you got to make sure you're at least aware of that, right? So you got to grab somebody. I'm going to try to hold off. I'd like to get Blake Corum. I'm going to hold off on that. I don't want to grab him quite yet. I am going to get Michael Pittman. I like his upside in this build with the Steelers. Look, Steelers are a team that's probably going to use the middle of the field. Aaron Rodgers is going to play safe with him. DK Metcalf's going to help take some of those players deep, right? That's his talent. That's what makes him so great. So Michael Pittman's going to have a lot more options. This is really the best receiver opposite of Michael Pittman he's had since he's been really in the league. So I like him a lot there. Now, with that said, I got 2 more bench and then kicker defense. So you're starting to see some of the defensive and kickers going. You may have to play that strategy. You know your league best. So you may have to go a little bit early. I'm going to hold off. I'm going to get Jonathan Brooks here. Lot of upside. Not a great floor as of right now because we don't know what's going on with Jonathan Brooks. We have not seen him play since he's come into the league. But I like the little bit of a risk there. I don't feel really bad about that. And I'm going to grab, obviously, 1 more wide receiver or kicker. Again, I'm not going to grab a tight end. You can if you feel that's a great strategy, but I'm not going to go that way. Now, between the options, you got Stephon Diggs. Obviously, he was phenomenal last year. Jaden Reed, who I really like for the Packers. You've got players like Concepcion, the rookie, things like that. So I'm going to go Jaden Reed. I think he's a little bit of a safer play. I like what the Packers have done. I like him as probably, I don't know if you want to call him the wide receiver one, but I think he's got the most upside in that offense. Obviously, Watson is the big play guy, but I think Jaden Reed's going to be the guy they're going to really lean on a lot. Now I got to get my kicker and my defense. I'm going to go kicker here in Cam Little. Man, great kicker, right? Almost broke records. He is phenomenal. And then I'm going to get my defense, obviously, to build it out. Looking at the options here, you got the Ravens, Patriots, Steelers, Jaguars, really good defenses here. I'm going to go grab the Patriots, one of the better defenses in the league. That's helped them out a lot, especially getting to the Super Bowl last season. So that is my overall team for the 10-team league. Hopefully this really has helped you guys out. So let's talk about how this went. All right, so that is my mock draft for the 10-team league. Again, this was in the 7th spot. Obviously, your draft's going to be a little different. These are mock drafts. They always change. With that said, though, you can start to see where players are starting to be a lot more consistent in these drafts, especially with the season really 2 or 3 weeks away. So hopefully this helps you guys out. If you guys have any questions, hit me up in the comments down below. If there's any other type of formats you guys like to see right before the season starts, let me know. I'd love to help you guys out and give you guys some guidance there. Again, make sure you guys obviously are subscribed to the channel. Hit that like button. We got great content coming into the season to help you guys with your lineups. And I'll see you guys next time.